getting 20 dozen mayfly off me. So I think he was buying flies for whoever he was staying with in his accommodation. So it was fine. I had the 20 dozen flies, and normally they come with their box, and you have your box, and you count them out and obviously put them into their box, and then it comes to settling up. So 20 dozen at the time would have been €40, and he pulls out a €500 note. This thing was crisp. Now this was fresh.
Was it real?
It was probably still warm coming off the press. I don't know to this day if he was chancing his arm, thinking I wouldn't have the change. But I was able to break the €500 note on the side of the road for him as a maybe 9-year-old.
Hello and welcome to the Ireland on the Fly podcast about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland. This week we're joined by Paul Molloy from Oughterard, whose family through generations living by the lake shore has been steeped in Irish fly fishing. And as a kid growing up, Paul tells us of the mayfly market where they would be selling mayflies by the dozen, and then as he got older how he got more and more into the fly tying side of things, even winning the All-Ireland Youths competition. So my season has been quite good. Got off to a really nice start in January, so I was in Patagonia for a week. Bastards. Yeah. So nice start to the year. Super fishing, chasing double figure sea trout.
Were you there with Conor Arnold?
I was, yes, yeah. So I was one of the group that was out there.
I have seen the pictures.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's hard to describe the landscape. The quality of fishing, the quality of the lodge, it's something that just you have to experience. Initially, I suppose going out there, I kind of said to myself, it would be a once in a lifetime trip. Do it now. But we're scrambling to see how we can figure out to get back out there. So I'm lucky. I have another trip coming up, so I'm off to Idaho in October chasing steelhead. So that's kind of my focus at the moment. So I'm just kind of starting the preparations, just doing a bit of research, and planning that trip.
Actually, can I just, sorry Tom, can I just go down this rabbit hole just for a minute?
Fly time will be held for a minute. Darren's found a rabbit hole.
Yeah, let me just go down this one for a bit. So like, are you brown trout man? Are you salmon? Like, are you just cassified? I think.
Predominantly brown trout. I suppose growing up it would have been brown trout.
Yeah, because the reason why I want to ask you, Paul, is then where does the steelhead? You want to be hardcore for that, like.
Yeah, so I suppose salmon crept in a couple of years ago. I'm friendly enough with Conor Arnold. It happened I was tying a couple of flies for him going out to Sweden a couple of years ago, and he was, I suppose, going to occupy himself with grayling and in the evenings potentially if the fishing was tough. So he wanted a couple of flies going out there, so I tied him a couple of flies. At that stage, I'd never caught a salmon on the fly. And I suppose the transaction was that I'd give him a couple of dozen flies and he would help me catch my first salmon. So I would have went down to Conor and he would have invited me down in August the following year. Conditions were looking favourable, and yeah, he happened to fulfill his commitment. So I got a couple of salmon that day, and he warned me it was all downhill after that. So I think I can't remember if I hooked 6 or 7 salmon that day.
Oh Jesus!
Quickly went downhill.
So like, have you done steelhead before? Because I'm fascinated by them. Like, I've never done it.
So I suppose never done it, and kind of getting into destination fishing a little bit, just seeing what's out there. I hadn't really kind of planned to chase steelhead. It just so happened that there was a position on a trip came up, and I kind of just jumped on it. So we're going over to the Clearwater in Idaho, and the second week in October.
And what's the expectations for the steelhead when you're over there? Is it like lucky if you land one?
Yeah, I think expectations would be, I think it's kind of, they're hoping maybe a fish a day per angler potentially. So I wouldn't be that experienced or knowledgeable on this. Potentially afterwards, after the week over there, I'll know a lot more. So I'm kind of going blind at the moment. So just getting out there, seeing what it's about, giving it a crack.
Brilliant. What we might do is catch up with you then when you come back, because I'd love to find out about it. Like,
it would be really interesting. I think steelhead are fascinating, and I don't blame you for grasping this one.
Yeah,
Paul. Yeah, because I'd be really, really interested to hear about it, because like it's akin to like Atlantic salmon fishing. You know, as you say, one fish a day if you're lucky. You know, which isn't a million miles away from. Well, we won't get into that rabbit hole, but you know what I mean. it's roughly similar.
It'll be a big change from brown trout fishing in Patagonia.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
exactly.
So,
Although, like, one a day per angler for steelhead isn't bad, like. So it must be quite a decent run on
yeah,
the.
yeah. So I think the way it's fun. No, I'd say I wouldn't be an expert at all in steelhead. But I think they kind of get two defined runs, similar to spring salmon grills. So you have your A run and your B run. Your A run comes in first, which tend to be your larger fish, and your B run then follows on. So I think the time that we're hitting this is around B run territory, and just on the verge between your A and your B run. Um, so yeah, hopefully we'll bump into a few, and hope it'd be nice to get a couple on the bank.
Yeah, that would definitely. Is it all Irish lads going over?
Yeah, so pretty much there's a couple of guys that I was in Patagonia with, they're coming in, and just a couple of mates then on top of that. So
Brilliant.
party of 6 in total.
Super. We'll catch up with you then. Tom, I'm done. I'll hand over to you now.
Yeah. Well, I'm very glad that Paul forgot to mention one thing at this year was when we were fishing together in our hospice competition, Carnamona, and Paul gave me a good pasting on dry flies, on his own flies.
Everyone gets lucky
actually.
once, Tom.
No. Yeah, and you had a couple of good fish that day as well, didn't you?
Yeah, it was an enjoyable day. It was really, I think everything just aligned, Tom, that day. We had a rice, started the mayfly, fish were looking up.
Fish were going, got a couple. Yeah, I one as well, but very interesting for 2 fly towers. We were chopped bought flies, but we won't elaborate.
Can't pretend that.
Paul, one of the reasons I want to get you on, I mean, a lot of people might know this, but years ago, I think it's over 20 years ago now, Taffy started a youth fly tying competition, All Ireland youth fly tying competition.
Yep.
And I remember back in 2011, you were the All Ireland youth fly tying champion.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember you tying back then. I remember you coming in as a young whippersnapper from Oughterard, a 12, 13-year-old. You won the under 16 one as well, but it was nice. It was great to see you win the All Ireland individual one.
Yeah, no, definitely. That was in Mallow that year, from what I can remember. So I suppose flight time's always been there, Tom. Coming from or growing up in Oughterard, fishing was kind of just part and parcel of the area. As you know, Oughterard is steeped in angling tradition, and I suppose growing up there, you had no choice but to participate at some capacity at some stage along the way. So flight time, I suppose I picked up flight time very early, and I was trying to, I suppose, put a date on when I would have taken to it. Which is it's hard to pick the time frame when I would have started tying flies. I was definitely very young. Like I remember getting materials from Santa Claus. For flies. So that would put a time frame on it.
Yeah. And you really got into it very well. Now I remember seeing your flight, Paul, as a judge after games, and to be honest, all I can say is I remember being really impressed back then. Sort of, well, these are really good. When we used to judge at that time, just let you know, there judges would come in later, and they would be brought into a separate room, and all you would see are the flies with a number on them. So there was no way to tell who had tied anything, and you would only find out afterwards.
And was there like flies like Paul's were standouts? Like would they be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I have to say, and Paul, remember that the quality was actually the standard of that competition was very, very good.
Absolutely, yeah. I suppose for a small country, we have like serious quality tires. A nice variety of tires, from your salmon fly tires to classic salmon flies, traditional wets. I think we're definitely up there with what's out there. You go onto Facebook any evening and you come across several standout flies from a variety of anglers. Like I suppose it is nice. It's a great place to get inspiration. There's a lot of really talented guys in there that time flies and willing to share. Like fly tying it's a niche, really. It's a niche within our sport. So a lot of guys angle or trout fishing, and fly tying on top of it's another layer of, I suppose, to be a good trout angler, you probably need to be able to tie flies in some capacity. But yeah, it's impressive what we can do, or what is being done.
And tell me, Paul, I was just wondering, sorry, did it come from the family in terms of the fly tying? Like where were you shown? Who showed you?
I come from a place, a little townland called Bershing, which is about a mile from Oughterard village. It's on the shore of Lough Corrib. We actually have a holiday home.
It's famous in Corrib circles. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a holiday home that I suppose was always quite busy with anglers, traveling anglers, and a lot of the guys would have brought materials with them to tie flies in the evenings if they didn't have particular flies. So that was always kind of there and it was rubbing off, and you'd be meeting these guys and they'd be telling you about flies, they might be giving you flies, they might be sitting down with you and tying a couple of flies at a very early age. So that kind of continued on to getting a voice, getting the materials, tying myself, and then showing off and getting feedback. And I was lucky. I had a lot of people willing to share information very early. So it definitely brought me on, getting exposure to a variety of patterns. And a lot of these guys were coming from abroad, so it wasn't necessarily just Irish anglers. So you're getting different styles of flies, what was working, different dry flies, so all that kind of weighed into, I suppose, how I think about tying flies today.
Would have been social media was on the go back in 2011. How much did that play a part in, like, trying to think, was the likes of, was Davy McPhail on the go when you were starting off? Or
Davy was,
what did
yeah.
you do? Yeah, was he? Yeah.
Yeah, so Davy was so I suppose Davy, YouTube was kind of only getting going around that time. Now, Davy, I know I had a couple of videos up at that stage, but what we used to do during the off season, we used to go to the Galway Fly Tying Guild in the Bridge Club.
That's right. Yeah.
So every Friday evening from 8 to 10, there was a couple of us that used to go and go in and sit down and just tie flies and pick up on tips from the more seasoned fly tyers that were there. There used to be a really good number, it used to be probably 30 plus. People used to meet up on a Friday, tie a few flies. And I suppose people who were old enough went to the pub afterwards for a few social ones. And those kids went home.
Yeah. Actually, it has to be said, that was a fantastic venue, and a load of people learned to tie flies from that. That was in the Galway Bridge Club, wasn't it?
Yeah, across from St. Mary's.
Across from St. Mary's, yeah. Really good. And come here, did you ever continue going into it where you could go for a social pint afterwards?
No. Never got to that stage, Tom.
Yeah, no. Moved on.
Just from reading the notes from Tom, is you ended up moving away from Oughterard.
Yeah, so I would have went to college in Limerick. Spent a couple of years in Limerick, and I currently work in Shannon at the moment, but I live in Tipperary.
North Tip, is it?
North Tip, yeah, Nina.
So you're beside Lough Corrib then?
Close to Lough Corrib, and I have the Nina River flowing down the bottom of my garden. So back home on Corrib, as I mentioned, I'm from Bershing. So when you sit at our kitchen table at home and you look out the window, you just see water. So we're slightly elevated. So we're right on the lake. You have Inishtawi in front of you, you have Rollion, and then the Shambo. So it's just funny, I suppose, that I went from one body of water to happenstance living beside another. Yeah,
funny how that happened, Paul. Funny, really strange how that happened. Yeah,
I swear it wasn't planned.
No, landed on your feet there suddenly.
So did you have to then? Is it mainly rivers fishing now that you're doing?
Yeah, so for the last couple of years, I suppose once I moved away, I was obviously prioritizing college. But last couple of years, once I kind of finished up college, really got into rivers. So my fiance is from Burr. So I spent a lot of time in Burr during summers fishing small-ish rivers around that area. And then I suppose I fished ashore quite a bit. I haven't fished much this year, but in recent years I would have spent a lot of time on the shore, on the Nore, the larger rivers. But I suppose the last couple of years I've really kind of got a draw back for lake fishing, and particularly around buzzer fishing. So that's currently what I'm latched onto at the moment. So just the quality of trout you get on buzzers is superb. And it's nice tying as well. I enjoy tying buzzers. There's millions of varieties of buzzers, and a lot of synthetics. So you can get quite clean appearances to flies. You get quite sharp flies, which I get satisfaction from. And you can get uniform flies quite easily as well. You're not dealing with natural materials. So a lot of flexi flosses, milers, tinsels, and then into your resins and varnishes.
It's gas to hear you talk that, Paul. And as a fly tyer, I know what you mean because you're a really neat fly tyer, and immediately what you say there with the synthetics and like flexifloss, you're going to get uniformity. And I
Yep.
hark back to I mean that is a crucial thing in any fly tying is where you can get two flies almost similar. I know what you
Yeah,
mean. I mean, yeah, you like that with
100%.
flexifloss.
You can get that too. I suppose it's more difficult to get that with traditional wets
Yeah.
and dries, but definitely, I suppose it's similar. I would have tied a lot of perdigons as well for my river fishing. So there
Mm.
is a bit of crossover. You're dealing with resin synthetics as well. So you
Do you
get
enjoy
quite a
tying?
nice.
Yeah. Do you enjoy tying perdigons?
I do, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
for me, I suppose when I started getting back into the lake fishing and buzzer fishing, I kind of viewed buzzers as kind of almost like a lake perdigon. You're following a lot of the same steps. You're building up resins.
Yeah.
You're playing with
And
synthetics.
some people in rivers have the same opinion of perdigons as guys on lakes have the same opinion of
Absolutely.
buzzers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Nymphers.
Nymphers, yeah.
Nymphers.
Yeah,
What is it? The lob or on the lake worm fishing. But it's
yeah,
interesting that you say that. Here's one thing: if ever you get, let's say, two olive bumbles, and that's my particular favorite, and if you get them and they match perfectly, Paul, I know exactly what you're saying. If you can have two, like, because an olive bumble is not, it's bohemian. It's not stand
mm.
in line like all the other soldiers. That's why I like those patterns. They're kind of different. There's something about them.
They're
But when
unique.
you can get, yeah, they are
Yeah,
unique. But when you can get two of them similar, and I see exactly what you say that, and that's much harder to do with all natural materials and fibers coming all over
yeah.
the place.
100%. Like I suppose if you're even taking a bumble, like if you were to tie a golden olive bumble, if you take a hackle from a particular part of the saddle, now you can get quite uniform colors.
Mm.
So obviously you'd be dyeing over quite a dull tone, so you'd be dyeing over a white. Um, but when you get into say natural capes and you're dyeing them, you get variations. So even down to colors in bumbles.
Yeah.
Olives, there's how many different shades of olives, like Sussy olives, Lake olive, and then you're into your golden olives, and there's slight variations along the way. And then you're
Yeah.
dealing with blue jay, which again, like
Oh
doesn't
yeah. Well,
vary a
yeah.
huge amount, but the
Well,
volume of blue definitely.
the volume and actually working with it. And by the way, I'm a complete bumble snob. If it doesn't have J, I'm sure you're
Yep,
with me.
not a
If it
bumble.
doesn't have J, thank you very
Yeah,
much. Um, I've done things like I've sat down with the scalpel and
yep,
split the J feather open.
yep, yep,
Now generally what I do is I just pick the easy ones out and tie them on from the the thin end. Yeah, that's kind of
yep.
cheating because yeah,
Yeah, so I suppose when I'm tying my bumble Sam, I tie everything forward with jungle, or sorry, with
yeah.
the blue jay, and
Mm.
then get the hair dryer to it just as you're tying it off. So you'll palm your hackle, you bring up your rib, and just before you bring your thread, move your thread forward to in front of the blue jay. Get a hair dryer and blow it all back. Get it sit back, and then you have a nice neat area to work in for
Mm.
your head.
Yeah, yeah. Nice one. Nice one. I haven't tried that one for a while. I might go back to it because I'm running out of easy feathers.
There, I know that's something to do this evening, Tom.
Maybe not this evening.
Can I ask actually, Paul? It's interesting. Just you were saying that you prefer, say, tying the buzzers because of the synthetics, and just as me as a non-fly tyer, just looking at say the olive bumble that Tom's looking, the wets, the naturals, they're a prettier fly. So aesthetically, is it more that the functionality of the buzzers and the perdigons appeals to you as opposed to maybe the aesthetics of it, or?
No, I think for me with buzzers, understanding the material, what you can get from the material, I think it's important. Simple things like flexifloss. So where I get my satisfaction when I open my box of buzzers, I like to think they're all fairly similar. There's no major variation. The colors will obviously vary depending on what I'm tying, but the style is the same. And you can only really achieve that by using the same materials in different colors. So understanding the material. So flexifloss, it's in the hint is in the name. It flexes so you can stretch it. It's quite a durable material, and it's understanding how to use that to um, maximize that material, get what you want from it. So like applying pressure in certain areas, there's a kind of a nice logic flow to tying a buzzer, and then you have your flexiglass cheeks. But I suppose what I was trying to allude to was around mylars, like putting colours underneath them, you can get a big variation. So when the light hits, so I'd be a big fan of a holographic, red holographic underneath, and not mylar, the mirage. So when the light hits it in a certain way, you'll get just a kind of red hue off it. And likewise, you can change that. You can put a green holographic tinsel under it. You get a greenish hue. So there's endless combinations. Now, at the end of the day, I don't know if it makes much difference. It definitely helps me choose a fly to put on the cast, which ultimately, I suppose, will get down in front of the fish at some stage. But I don't know if there are any better fish catchers than your bog standard buzzer.
But if you're catching them, you're very happy.
Yeah, exactly. Right choice.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the plan. I think it's easier to obtain good quality synthetics as well, which is always a plus. Natural materials by their nature vary. So you're buying a pig in a poke when you're buying stuff online a lot of the time. Certain things are fine to buy online. When you're getting into expensive hackles, you can't be getting them in your hand looking for what you want from that hackle. And looking for the coloration, looking for, like, particularly when it comes to natural colors, dyed, you will get away a little bit with dyed materials because there is that uniformity. But when you're dealing with like natural grizzles or crees or badgers, like trying to obtain a silver badger is a good genetic silver badger for dry flies is very difficult. Like Mets have some really nice colorations, but I don't know, I haven't come across a really nice silver whiting saddle. Yes, I've been looking, but I haven't found one.
And that's what you've got to do, isn't it, Paul? You've got to look. You won't click buy on an online site. No, you've got to look.
You learn fairly quickly. So I this been searching for a silver badger, a nice silver badger for a couple of years now, and like I purchased a couple online thinking that I was getting what I was looking for. So I have a lot of golden badger now.
If anyone's looking
one
for
man's silver is another man's golden.
Yeah.
Just quick one there. You also were involved in the mayfly market in Oughterard as a kid. Yeah?
Yep.
Would you explain that to people, please?
Yeah, so I suppose Corrib mayfly season for every angler is big part of their year, big part of their season. They always look forward to it. In Oughterard, the area would be renowned for tourist anglers, as I kind of mentioned. They come from far and wide. They stay in a lot of B&Bs, holiday homes. Just congregate. It seems congregate in Oughterard. I think there's a good social aspect to that in Oughterard. A lot of nice pubs as well. So I suppose growing up, there was always the demand for dappers looking for live mayfly. And before they go out, they'd always purchase a couple of dozen, whatever, and the kids would sell them. So the mayfly market happens, I suppose, really in the square in Oughterard outside Lake Hotel, where kids would collect mayfly the evening before, and they go congregate in the square and they sell the mayfly to the tourist anglers. Now, I was slightly different. Being from Burrisheen, we were on the shore, and the Glan, I suppose, road itself would have a lot of holiday homes. So anglers would stay on the Glan shore. So we'd always sell flies outside our house. So our house is on that road. So yeah, but like if you were to drive that road in May back early 2000s, you would have come across a number of kids or us selling flies on the side of the road in little boxes. So sitting out there before school, waiting for anglers to pull up.
And how much were they going for?
€2 a dozen. When the currency changed, prior to that, it was £1 a dozen. So we'd go out the evening before, collect as much as you could, and then you'd sell them. So a lot of the times you'd have orders. You'd have guys that come back year on year, or if they're there for a week, they'll kind of have a chat with you the first day they're down and say, "Listen, I'll be back tomorrow for 10 dozen, and I'll need 10 dozen every day this week."
You'd get an order like that. Somebody would say, "What, 10 dozen for the next 6 mornings?"
Yeah. And so, yeah, and the same customers would come back year on year, you know.
Yeah.
So like if they dealt with you and they liked you, they'd come back. So I I had a couple of customers that I don't know, came back for a good few years. I remember I had one German guy who used to come. He used to come down. He didn't even dap, but every morning he'd take 10 dozen mayflies off me for 2 weeks, 14 days in the truss. And what he used to do was he would go and he'd find a sheltered corner of an island or a peninsula, and he'd start his own hatch. Yeah, so he he'd trickle out his mayfly, and eventually he'd get a fish up on him, and then he said he might only take 3 or 4 casts the full day, but that was what he got from fishing. That's what he enjoyed doing. So yeah, it's an interesting way of starting a hatch.
Each to their own. It's funny actually. You know, other places, kids have the lemonade stands, but in Oughterard it's the mayfly stands, which are €2 a dozen.
Big business.
Yeah.
So I suppose back in the early 2000s, there could have been 20 kids on the square selling flies, and then there was a demand for it. So much so, like, that would happen in the morning. Obviously, school starts at 9 a.m. So the school, there was an agreement that if you were selling flies and you had permission from your parents, it was acceptable for you to turn up late to school. So you went to school in the morning, and there'd be rows of these little ornate mayfly boxes lined up in the corridors outside the classrooms.
Fantastic! My God, it must be the only place you'd get it. Like, tell me this: would you ever struggle to catch them in the evening, like, or were you good enough that you knew? Yeah,
like, I suppose again on the Glen Shore, there's a lot of bays that would get steady hatches of flies, and a lot of it, I suppose, I know my own father would have been out with tourists certain weeks of the year. So he'd be on the lake. He'd know where there's fly hatching and where there's fish feeding. And he'd be talking to neighbours, relatives. So you'd have an idea where the fly is hatching. So you tend to follow that information. A lot of the times you'd be out in the islands, or you might, say, go back along the shores, depending on what direction the wind was blowing. So for us, like, if you had a north wind, it was blowing into Burrishing Bay, so you'd focus on the shore there. If you had a westerly, now you're talking going out the lake, chasing the fly on islands. And if you had a calm day, you'd be maybe moving slightly off the shoreline into the bushes, so they'd fly off. They wouldn't be blown into the shore, they'd get up and they'd fly. So there's certain areas that would suit certain days. So I know, like, Malachy's would have always been a safe enough bet on the calmer days. Just it gets a really good hatch at Bog Bay, Perticarran Bay, and the fly would get up and they'd fly into the island, and you pick them along the stone walls.
Yeah,
fantastic.
It's gas here, and you say that there's nothing, seasoned mayfly pickers on a calm day, they'd look at somebody walking along the shore and they go, they haven't a clue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because on a calm day, they don't go towards the shore; they go up into the rushes. Was there rushes on Malachy's?
There was rushes along the shore. So there's I suppose a break between the shoreline and the walls, maybe 50 yards. But we used to get a lot of mayfly in Burrishing, Tom, going back through the years. I'm not sure what the hatches are like now.
But you must have loved the north wind. You must have loved the north wind, so that was the money getting blown into you.
Money blowing in.
You see, counting them by the dozen. There's €2 gone by the window. Like, we used to get flies on the gable of the house. That's you wouldn't even have to go to the shore at times, or you wouldn't even have to look that hard. That you get them that land on the house.
What was this about a €500 note?
Yeah, so there was a story there I was telling Tom when we were fishing that competition. So back in 2002, when the currency changed, I suppose we were just doing business as normal. We changed price from £1 a dozen up to €2 a dozen. And I had
that's some jump now. In fairness, I don't think exchange rate now was that, but anyway,
what was it, 1 to 1.27?
Something like that.
But anyway,
go on.
I had this guy. I can't remember where he's from, but he pulled up. He wasn't the local, so and he was getting 20 dozen mayfly off me. So I think he was buying flies for whoever he was staying with in his accommodation. So it was fine. I had the 20 dozen flies, and normally they come with their box, and you'll have your box, and you'll count them out and obviously put them into their box, and then it comes to settling up. So 20 dozen at the time would have been €40, and he pulls out a €500 note. Like, this thing was crisp now. This was fresh.
Was it real?
It was probably still warm coming off the press, and I don't know to this day if he was chancing his arm, thinking I wouldn't have the change. But I was able to break the €500 note on the side of the road for him as a what, maybe 9-year-old.
I was going to say, what kind of 9-year-old deals with €500 change? How much money were you really making from the mayflies?
I suppose two things we were afraid of growing up was the wooden spoon and the taxman.
Yeah, like I actually don't think it's not the €500 note I'm more surprised at. It's the fact that you actually had change.
Yeah, there's a lot of new bikes bought in the May and start of June around the Oughterard.
I'd say you couldn't believe it. Here's this 9-year-old counting out the 20s. Hold on, 1, 2, yeah.
Yeah.
Does it still go on in Oughterard with the kids?
I'm not sure. I suppose typically May for me, like the last couple of Mays, I've kind of been more down the lower lake, and I haven't, when I'd be passing up there, I wouldn't be passing the time that they would be selling. So I'm not sure. I don't know if the tradition is still as strong as it used to be. I presume it's not. I know there's still a couple of local kids that still do it, but I don't know how prolific it is anymore.
Oh, Jesus, the money is to be made. Like, they're missing the trick, I think.
There'll probably be fewer dappers. I wouldn't say there wouldn't be dappers, but there wouldn't be as many dappers as over the years.
It's definitely dwindling away.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a lovely way of fishing, Joe. I thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, or I used to get a lot of sport on crickets later in the year. So in the evenings, after school, you could go out in between out in a shambo and you pick up a couple of fish and crickets. Between like maybe 8 and 10 in the evening. Lovely way of getting a fish. You get a real nice take, and it's kind of a dry fly equivalent, really.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. That's the only bit of dapping I would do now. I like to do a bit of the cricket sometime around this time of year. The takes are lovely, and also it's generally a good fish, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just it's the take, and you give him that little bit of time, and then you lift, and he's there, and it all locks up. Yeah, it's lovely. It's a lovely way of fishing. Like, I don't know, Tom, for you, is there any tradition of picking mayflies around Carnamona?
There was a bit, but it was never as industrial as it was in Oughterard.
The mayfly industrial complex.
Yeah.
We're very entrepreneurial over in Oughterard.
Very entrepreneurial, yeah. No, we did have a few amount. My buddy Paul Nahalya, still talks about it. He lived right in the village. So he did quite well, and he was right beside the post office. So guys would come and they'd order them off him. So, and there was one or two more. Paul would have done well out of it. A couple of guys, but a few would have done well. But I suppose like the hotels and everything, we had a couple of guest house. We'd never had the same number. Like, we had visitors, don't get me wrong, and there was boatmen and gillies here as well. But like, you Oughterard was the centre of the Corrib. Yeah, definitely. Without a doubt, really was.
Yeah, because even I suppose when you think of Oughterard as the village town, when you go through the pubs and the guest houses, it's ingrained there. Like, you have Lake Hotel, you have the Boat Inn, you had the Corrib Hotel. It's all connected back to the lake, like, and
it is
Corrib.
Yeah. A lot.
I was even looking, like, as just, I suppose, even down to the crest, like the GA, Oughterard GA, there's a salmon on the crest that represents.
There is actually, yeah.
Corrib crest has water, jaw for representing the Corrib, so it is very ingrained there.
I know you're not a million miles from it, Paul. Do you get back to fishing much?
So I think I've 23 days on Corrib this year, and that's the way it stacks up. I haven't done actually much last month. It's probably 4 or 5 weeks since. Definitely, it's probably 5 weeks since I fished Corrib. At the time I was out, there's still a good hatch of mayfly. The last couple of times now, it was probably towards the end of May, but there was still a couple of fish that were obliging to them. No, I didn't persist with mayflies. I was just pulling wets, but picked up a couple of fish. It was some lively fishing. So I try to get back there maybe once every 2 weeks if I can at all.
Sure, you're still busy on it. Like, is it the loughs still has your heart? Like,
in a way, it has definitely. The last couple of years, as I say, I kind of done river fishing, but there is something about Lough Corrib, like, you know, I was like, it just keeps it. Particularly, I suppose it's a nice way to start the season. You know, when you like the last couple of years, I was kind of telling Tom, I've had buzzer fishing in Oughterard on the 17th of March. So, and 17th of March is when the shore kicks off. So, you're kind of with rivers. You're gambling with the weather. So, if you have a wet March, rivers are flooded. It's tough. The lake, so it's more stable. You can definitely get out there in a wider variety of weather conditions. So, yeah.
It's funny, yeah. You've kind of returned to the fold because I know you went into the river fishing big time, really, but you're kind of returning a small bit to the roots. Yeah, fair play to you.
Yeah.
Come here, Paul.
Yeah.
Do you know what I want to ask you? And anybody who follows you on Instagram, and self included, looking at, I'm really impressed with the photography and the photos you put up of your flies, right? So, chatting to you. I mean, what do you use, or what do you do, or what's your modus operandi before you go taking the pictures? Do you take loads? What tips do you have for anybody who's out there wants to take good pictures of their flies?
So the biggest thing, I suppose, when it comes to photography now, and I am by no means a photography expert. I'm chancing my arm completely with it. But I suppose what I do is control the variables where you can. And photography is the biggest part of photography is getting the lighting right. You know, so I have in my flight time room, you know, I have good lighting. You can see it here. And I have ring lights. So I have DSLR, mirrorless DSLR. Like, it's not an overly expensive camera. And I have a macro lens. So what I do is with the tripod, I'll tie a fly, set it up on the device. I have the tripod beside me, and the settings stay the same on the camera. Once I tune in the settings, once you get the ISO right, the aperture, shutter speed, that's it. It stays at that. Like, sometimes I will play around depending on what I'm trying to get from the photo. Depending on the size of the fly, if I want to get a slightly deeper field of view, or if the lighting condition isn't the same as it was a couple of days previous, I'll adjust my settings somewhat, but they tend to stay the same. And I suppose I'm able to pull the whole setup into my voice, grab a photo, grab two photos, and then I can send them straight to my phone. I try to minimize changing any colors or editing them because I like them to be as true to what I see as they are on Instagram or Facebook or wherever.
And when you send them over to your phone, what size are they? You're putting them at? Do you have to downsize them beforehand, or what do you do?
You're asking the wrong fella. Just does it for me, Tom.
It just does it over, yeah?
Yeah, so my camera connects to wireless. So it's just a Sony A6000.
Oh, brilliant, yeah. And that's it. That's all done for you.
Yeah, send it over, and then I might go in, I might tweak something. So I suppose you see a lot of my photos have a plain black background, and that's just normally a black card that I put behind the photo. I'm shooting a relatively narrow field of view, so I get the flying focus. The background is blurred out, so I might adjust the level of blackness, or I might adjust the sharpness of the picture somewhat. But I tend not to do too much at all.
Grand. And let's say for your tripod, do you put it randomly, or do you have the same spot that you put it in? Do you know where to put it?
I just align it to the jaws of the device. So normally, I'm lucky, like I have a lot of space where I am now. I have an office dedicated, and so it's very easy for me just to pull the chair out of the way, drop the tripod in, grab a few quick photos, send them to my phone, and there's no real effort in it anymore.
By the sounds of it, your camera's all set up for fly tying only. You're not one of those when you go out fishing, you've got all the gear strapped around you and you're like trying to take all the perfect picture of the fish and all this kind of stuff. Like,
no, all my fishing photos will be taken on just my iPhone.
Yeah.
It's very unusual I bring a camera with me. I might do on certain days if I wanted to get something in particular. You know, if I wanted to photograph a mayfly, I might bring my camera with me, but it's not something that comes with me as part of my tackle on a daily or routinely basis.
Because I suppose a lot of time you'd find, you know, it kind of gets in the way of the fishing, doesn't it? Like you're kind of thinking so much, I have to get the photo, I have to get the picture. It's like I've said to you, Tom, like I've often, Paul, like when I've gone fishing, you know, dabbled with, should I bring the mics, the wireless mics, clip it on, and you know, and I was just like, no, I just want to fish. Like I just, you know, don't want to be thinking of.
It's a distraction.
Yeah, just you know, because when you're fishing, that's when you want to just fish, like.
I've done it a
Yeah.
few times when I had to get photos for articles and things, and it's a real pain.
Yeah.
It really is. It does interfere with your fishing. You want to set
Yeah.
aside, really, what you do want to set aside is an hour, hopefully with the
Yeah.
something, and then
Yeah.
just put it away.
Yeah.
Put it away.
Mm.
And, but this idea of going down, I agree with you totally, Paul. Just bring your iPhone. It's grand. You get a shot
And,
on
and,
that
and
if you want to.
normally what I find is like if you go out with a plan to get a photo, it doesn't play out.
Yeah.
It's like you want to get a nice photo of a fish or you want a nice backdrop. It just doesn't happen. You just kind of go with the flow, and normally on a day's fishing.
Yeah.
Just go with it, yeah.
Yeah, dead right.
Although we have a full day recorded of myself and Dara.
Oh, gee, that's right.
Right?
That's unbroadcastable, Tom.
I tell you, yeah.
But see, the problem with that, Tom, is the amount of editing. So what we did, Paul, was I had these new mics and I wanted to check them out. So I just clipped them on. So we forgot about them and we recorded for probably about 4 hours. Now, the chances of me going back, listening to those 4 hours and editing them and putting them together in some kind of sense, I definitely don't have the time or the will or the inclination.
I could just take a chance and just play it for 4 hours unedited.
No. I think I'd need a good lawyer. I'd need a good lawyer to do that. Like, no, what you would do is, I think, Tom, if we were doing it, is you just go, right, we're going to do this for the next hour, right? We're now recording, and so at least then it's tightened up. But just fish, that's my attitude. Just fish. I think it's time for the last question, Tom.
We ask everybody who's a guest on this show, what is their most memorable fish on the fly?
It's a tough question. It definitely got the cogs turning throughout today, trying to think of one in particular. You have all these, I suppose, your first lake fish or the first fish you catch on your own fly, and first fish you catch on a certain technique. So I spent a lot of time pondering. But for me, probably the most standout one would have been last year on the Orkla in Norway. Just given, I suppose, the circumstances around salmon recently and what's going on over in Norway. So I was over fishing the Orkla last June in tough conditions. I think there was fewer fish around than normal, following the same trend as this year, I suppose. But weather conditions were tough. It was really warm. River was quite low. But I suppose on the third day I managed to get into a nice pool and happened to come across, I suppose, my first Norwegian salmon. For me, that's probably a standout fish, definitely. So he wasn't a massive fish. He was probably a fish of about 15 pounds. But for me, I suppose it was an errant fish. It was the only fish that I met for the week. After 6 days fishing, just to come away with one fish, and grateful to get that one fish. There were some guys on the trip that didn't manage to land the fish. So that for me is probably my most standout fish or most memorable fish so far.
Beautiful. You have a picture?
I do. Yeah.
So
there's a video there as well somewhere, but I don't know if it's suitable for
broadcast
the internet. Yeah, definitely not.
Well, maybe if we get the picture off you, we'll put the picture up anyway. People can have a look.
100%.
Yeah. Tell me, actually, come here. Have you got a brown trout favourite? I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
I've a couple. There definitely is one. There's probably a couple. There's three I could pick from. And the three, I suppose, different situations. But the one that's probably the most stand out to me would have been my first decent fish I got on carb. And I actually got him on a buzzer in front of my house. I'd say I could have been 9 years of age, maybe 10. It was fishing maybe about 3.5 pound. During my Easter holidays. So I can't remember the exact year, but it would have fallen nicely with duck fly. And buzzers was just kind of taken off. I suppose you'd be familiar with the time it kind of gained a bit of traction.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of local guys at it. There's other guys dabbling with it, and so I said I could give it a crack. And I must have spent 7 days on the trot, on the lake, trying to catch something. Caught a lot of perch, and then got a few of these like vicious takes. And Tom, you know what the takes are like. And as a young fella, you're like, Jesus, like, is that Moby Dick? But yeah. I eventually managed to connect with a nice fish and keep them on. So that was probably one of my most standout brown trouts. There is several other fish, but that one stands out.
And that was in your own bay in Barshin, yeah?
Yeah, in front of the house.
That's
Yeah, well,
brilliant.
maybe 150 yards out.
I tell you, not many people can say that, their one of the most memorable fishing flies just outside the house there, like, where you grew up.
Yeah.
So you were kind of destined, Paul, to be fly fishing no matter what. Like,
Oh, yeah. Like from the 15th, from the start, even from the Stephen's Day, things were kind of always kind of, you be getting twitchy, you might be like going after brickings, like I remember catching brickings like in January, getting ready as a young guy, going out with the brandy bottles and the loaf of bread on your arm, going up the Man River.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's just, it all feeds into it. Like it's just an exciting time of the year.
Mm.
And then, yeah, it's steeped there in tradition. Like, even watching my grandfather polishing his spinners or his bricking mounts.
Yeah.
That happened around that time as well. Like, and then it all fed into it. So I actually have a couple of those mounts here. I've been framed.
no way.
So yeah. So I've got them framed here in the office.
Brilliant. Well, I tell you have some history and heritage with fly fishing, Lough Corrib, fly tying as well. So, and long may it continue. And best of luck with the steelhead in October. We might catch up with you maybe later on, just to be interested to see the paddies on tour. Paddies do steelhead. See how we,
Yeah, absolutely.
get on. Paul Molloy, thanks again for joining us. And just actually before we go, if people want to follow you Instagram, what's the handle?
It's just Paul Molloy, I think.
Yeah, Paul Molloy.
Instagram,
Yeah,
so
and we're checking
find
out
it.
brilliant photos, brilliant flies there as well. So that'll be brilliant. Paul, thanks a million for joining us.
Thanks very much, Dara. Thanks, Tom.
Our thanks to Paul for joining us on the show. And don't forget to rate, review, and follow the Ireland on the Fly podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from.
Plus, you can keep up to date on IrelandOnTheFly.com as well as on Instagram. And myself and Tom will be back with another episode about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland.